Marta is a good example of how an empathic software engineer can become a vice president of Wefox, one of the most promising InsurTech platforms. Marta will explain us how working abroad, her vast experience in different sectors, and her collaborative leadership style helped her to climb to the current position.
Welcome to She Has a Voice podcast, stories about women of strength and their journey in tech.
Thanks a lot, Marta, for joining the podcast today.
Hello.
Marta, now you are at Wefox. I know that you love changing a traditional business, bringing innovation, and I think that Wefox is a really good example. But what is Wefox?
So Wefox is an InsurTech. It's the biggest InsurTech in terms of funding that exists in Europe. So InsurTech. But we call ourselves a tech company. And of course, that's what attracted me into it. I was working for a big insurance company and I was very happy, and I still have a lot of friends in Allianz. So hello to my friends in Allianz. But Wefox was, for me, the possibility of focusing on the technology, on the engineering part, because of course it's much more flexible and it's much more focused on innovation, because we need to disrupt the market. Allianz has a market, has sources of revenue. Technology is an enabler, but it's not their core business. In Wefox, technology is at the core of everything we do, because we're trying to redefine insurance using technology. It's a very dynamic, a thriving environment. People are passionate. People are very energetic. So of course I was drawn to it and I really like it. And basically we're trying to change the market. Wefox is not operating in Spain as a business. Our headquarters, technological headquarters are based in Spain, but we only operate in some other countries in Europe, in Germany, in Austria, and Switzerland. The idea is to make the insurance experience for customers, but also especially for brokers and people who are managing these insurances, more streamlined, faster, better experience. That's what we are working on.
Since I moved here to Germany, I completely understand, because they have insurances for everything. And Marta, do you think that it's possible to bring this innovation that I understand that it's in the core, right, from Wefox? Do you think it's possible to bring this innovation in a more traditional company, or do you need to start from scratch?
Well, that's a very good question, because I do not want to be negative, and I say, yes, it is possible. But in my experience, sometimes big companies, they want to bring innovation because they see other examples and they kind of know that it's necessary, but it is not in their DNA. So sometimes what they're trying to do is to bring innovation, as I like to say in Spanish, by decreto ley. Decreto ley, right, in Spanish. In English, it's like by law. We are going to be an agile company. Why? Because the CEO said that in 1 year we're going to be agile. It's so complex. And what does it mean to be agile? Does it mean that the engineering department is following Scrum? Does it mean lean leadership? Does it mean the mind changes? I think there is a big, and that's why I also like to study this digital strategy. I did this executive course that was about the digital strategy, and it was very interesting to be discussing with industry leaders from all over the world how they saw it. And there is when you realize that some of them, they really do not see the need for innovation. They just almost like tick in a box. Yes, we are an innovative company. While if you are in companies, startups, digitally native companies like Wefox and others, it's in our DNA, so it's much more simple. It's natural to us.
I completely agree. I think that if you want to bring this disruption, somehow you need to start from scratch. Either you build a new department and you put someone that has more traditional DNA. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And what is the best thing of your job at Wefox?
And the focus in technology. Nice. But it's related. I work with people who are not into politics, and I have to deal, of course, with certain level of politics, but that's okay. And I always say, right, leave that to me. That's my job. Most of the people are about delivering and producing change. And it's very related to the question we're discussing now. In very big companies, you find people who are not that interested in the company outcome, because the company has sources of revenue assured. The company is going to survive. They're like, I have worked for Allianz, I have worked for British Petroleum, I have worked for Hewlett Packard, so very big established companies. In those companies, there are some people who are just interested in climbing the ladder or in their own career because they can afford to do so. The company is so big, the impact they do, it's so minimal that their interest is about climbing the ladder, what the company is going to do for me. In companies like Wefox that are smaller and with this DNA, it's about, we have to make this company a success. People cannot afford to be thinking, oh yeah, but am I going to be a manager, this and that? Because, well, if the company doesn't do well, being a manager is not going to mean much, is it? So that's something I really like, is the trying to do things for the company and the technological excellence, like always trying to learn.
Marta, I know that one of your passions are sports, and that I heard that you like running marathons. So would you like in the future work or like combine engineering and sports?
Oh, I would love that. In fact, I've said to my husband, because I like to travel a lot, and I like to run. When I travel, like, you know, like run in different places. And sometimes when we are running in certain countries, they're like, oh, we should, you know, create an app to do this. And yeah, I would love it, because technology is really redefining as well the world of sport. That would be very cool. But, well, you never know.
Who knows? Maybe new business line for Wefox in the future.
Or kind of like travel sport insurance, maybe, you know.
I was, I think, watching a TV program the other day that they were talking about how InsurTech companies could benefit of the data coming from the e-watch, for example, and how they could adapt the price if they know that you are running 3 times per week. Yeah, the assumption would be that you are a more healthy person. So
and in fact, these are the kind of innovations that we look regularly at Wefox, exactly what you said. So we are, you know, experimenting a lot with the possibilities of, watches, combining it with location, with, health habits.
I read that when you were a teenager, you really like about coding, working in video games, and then you follow your passion and you start being a developer and then an IT manager. Was it always clear for you that you wanted to study computer science or engineering?
Yeah, pretty much, yes. When I was a teenager, and that was a long time ago, there was also a movie, it's called War Games, with Matthew Broderick. And I saw it, and I thought, wow, that is so cool. And then my parents gave me a computer, an Amstrad, and I started not only playing video games, but attempting to write my own games with BASIC, the programming language at the time. And I really liked it, because I was quite good at math and science, but I also liked the creativity and liberal arts and everything that actually is creating. So in coding, I found a way to create the algorithms, and I was hooked. I was 15, probably 16, I don't remember that much, but exactly the age, but it was before having to make my decision on which university career I was going to take, and I said, I'm just going to study computer science, yes. It was not that usual for girls to choose it, but the funny thing is that I didn't realize, I thought it was very cool, and because I was good at science, it was logical for me to do. But then I will always remember my first day in university. I studied in the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and I arrived to the classroom. There were more than 100 people, almost 200 people, and I just saw guys, and there were 4 or 5 girls. It wasn't a problem. It was more like, well, I guess it's because there are not so many girls interested, but it was not like, what am I doing here? I'm not going to belong. Because in my mind, I had the same right. I liked it. I was good at it. So why not? It's funny now when we say that it's very important to have role models, and I agree, but it's also important to build the confidence in young girls that it's not a question of gender or doing it because other women have done it. Of course it helps, but it's a question of girls need to feel entitled to study computer science engineering, because if you're good at it, if you like it, why not?
Marta, then reading a little bit more about you, I found out a really nice story that you were explaining that when you were a trainee at HP, at that time, Carly Fiorina become CEO. How did it impact your career, having a woman in such important position?
It's funny because in that respect, for me at that point, yes, it was important to have this role model because in Spain in the end of the 90s, but it was not that usual to have women in important leadership positions. It reinforced my feeling the same way I had a lot of confidence in my abilities as an engineer, that I could study software engineering, that I could work in HP. I didn't have that much confidence on me becoming a leader because I thought that it could be difficult to climb the ladder, right? So it really helped me thinking, well, it is possible.
And now, Marta, you are VP of Software Engineering for Digital Customers at Wefox. What does it mean, being a VP? Sounds very cool title, Vice President, but what does it mean? What do you do?
Well, I'm going to be very honest, and the reality is spreadsheets, PowerPoints, and politics. It's, and I say politics very intentionally because normally engineers, and I agree, we do not like politics, but when you reach vice president position, it's about talking with the stakeholders, understanding the needs, and also influencing, sometimes without authority. So it's about networking, internal networking, make sure that your engineering organization delivers on what the company needs, and it is impossible to do by pure engineering. Of course, you also need to have a very deep engineering background because you're going to be managing engineers. So you need to understand why things are happening. So it does help. At least it has helped me a lot to be an engineer myself. And then, of course, it's managing people. And I think we can discuss long, right, about how to lead people, especially engineers. But I think it's the part that I like the best in my job is the possibility of helping my teams to grow, my leaders to grow, my engineers to thrive. That's the part I like the most.
And how was it for you learning about politics and everything that has not to do with engineering itself?
Not that hard, funnily enough, and I think that's a particularity of women in general. I do not want to generalize because I've met people, men who are brilliant at politics and people skills. Not only because it's a different thing, right? One thing is people skills and the other is politics. And politics sometimes has this negative connotation, and it's very intentional that I said so because it's not nice sometimes, right? It's about negotiating, finding the common ground, but people skills as well. In general, in my career, I found that women are more suited to it. They're more inclined to it. But in general, we tend to be more empathetic. And when I say empathy, I do not mean compassion. Sometimes, right, it's confused and say, oh, you mean that you're empathic, you're a woman, it's because, somebody's having a problem, so you're going to cry and you're going to understand. Empathy is the ability to understand somebody's feelings and work with that. So it means that sometimes if you have somebody who is upset or if somebody who is talking a lot in a meeting or is acting in a weird way, you can realize about that and work around that and help that person. So this empathy, this ability to understand others' feelings and work with them, I found more often in women than men. So to your question, because my managers long time ago, very early in my career, detected that I was good with people, they said, Marta, can you help us at the time being a Scrum Master? Are you interested in that? And I've spent so many years learning, painfully learning on my mistakes, by seeing...
Learning by doing. So in my daily base, I work with engineers around the world, different cultures, and they are so talented, extremely talented. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing in my daily work is the communication. And how to connect people, how to understand people, and how to make sure that they are giving their best and they are understanding each other.
Yes. Yeah, and I can give you an example that has happened yesterday. So if people, at Wefox are listening to me, they're probably going to recognize what I'm talking about. Don't worry, I'm not disclosing company secrets, but sometimes with engineers, especially with principals and people who have a very deep technological background, they need to present some solutions to me as me or to the CTO. And they start the meeting by going into the details and talking about tokens and talking about the flow. And sometimes I had to stop them and say, okay, what is the purpose of the meeting? What do you want me to do? Why are we having this conversation, right? And they are like, they sometimes do not understand that. I do not know why, they are discussing this. And something as simple as say, this is the problem that we are facing. This is the solution that I'm giving you. It's as simple as that, but because it's not necessary normally in their daily work. So of course, they do not know how to do it. So sometimes it's just a question of
how you communicate, how you translate.
Long time ago, my manager, who was a woman, also said to me, when you send messages to C-level or to the board, it's like 2 lines. And I was like, no, but I need to explain this and I need to, no, 2 lines. They won't have time. Normally, at a certain level, they read the first line, not interested, they move on. It's, keep it simple, keep it up to the point. So, of course, you have to adapt to every situation, but executive summaries, and sometimes in the title of the email, back when everybody was using email, it just helps. Mm-hmm. It's like action required. I just need you to take this decision, and then the person will say, okay.
Marta, one of the things that I really like about reading about you and taking a look on your CV is that you have broad experience abroad. How was it for you? Do you think that this is important? Would you do it again, or would you like to stay at home?
Well, I most probably would like to do it again, but my family would kill me. And in fact, when I run it past them, they're like, oh, no, not again. But I love it. I'm very lucky because my career has allowed me to travel and discover new ways of working and living and cultures, because in the US, for instance, it's a very competitive culture. Then in the UK, most probably it's the professional culture I like the most. Maybe it's, I think they have a very good combination of work ethic. They work very hard, but they also have boundaries very well defined. That sometimes in Spain or other cultures, the emotional boundaries also between work and life are difficult. In France and in Switzerland, which are also completely different beasts. In general, what has gave me is perspective, because now I can understand why we're doing things, but I can also challenge why we're doing things, because I know in other countries, in other companies, in other cultures, they're doing things differently. Plus, we work in a very globalized industry. So although I'm based in Barcelona, my company is global and the delivery is global, and you have providers, you have stakeholders that are in very different cultures.
Talking about empathy, we were discussing, right, that women are more empathic in general, and also you were mentioning that that the leadership style is more collaborative. Do you see any other difference between the leadership? I guess you have had women as boss, men as boss. Any difference that you would highlight?
And I've had very good male bosses and very good female bosses. And yes, male bosses and executives, they tend to be more aggressive. And now again, I'm using the word very intentionally, because I was reading yesterday, Jacinta Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, resigned. And it's a figure I really admire, really like, because of her style of leadership. And one of her sentences is, because I value kindness, people think that I am not aggressive or assertive enough. And I always make the difference. You can be assertive. You need to be assertive. I do not like aggressive people. I do not like aggressive leadership style. I do understand, and this is something that I also had to learn painfully, is that you cannot use a collaborative leadership all the time. This is my preferred style of leadership, collaborative, meaning you listen to your opinions, you brainstorm, you decide together. At certain moments in time, especially during crisis, people need direction, and sometimes you need to take decisions, and you need to take decisions fast, and you need to provide direction, and you say, no, I'm sorry, I understand your reasoning, but this is the way we're going to do it. But in certain situations. But that's assertiveness, not aggressivity.
Marta, how, being a leader, can you give negative feedback? How do you manage this as a leader?
You have to provide this feedback based on examples. If you give the feedback and it's too vague, then of course the person is not really going to understand what you mean. So if you say, oh, you have a communication problem, like we were discussing before, right? Communication is very important. You, as a principal, you need to have better communication skills. The person is going to think, okay, what does this mean? But if you provide, look, the way that you write emails is not concise enough. And I'm going to give you 2 examples. Instead of writing like this, you write it like that. in meetings, instead of starting by jumping into technical matters, provide an executive summary and make sure that everybody in the room understands the purpose of the meeting. First, you have to be very clear with this reasoning. But then you have to also link it with a kind of proposal to improve. So it's about being constructive as well. So very well grounded and constructive. This is the way for you to get better. If you just provide feedback and it's perceived as destructive, I am not good enough, you're not going to help that person grow.
How do you coach your team? Because I think that this is also very important for you, and you emphasize it other times. How do you make sure that you're empowering people in your team?
So first, leading by example. And there are certain values that if I want to enforce those values, I need to act those values. Otherwise, it sounds fake. But also, I like using a lot examples, real examples of my life in the past. What I really do not like is the patronizing part. I really do not like managers who sound super patronizing. I know better. Why? Because I'm the manager. I prefer to explain situations in the past where I was doing the same mistake and what I learned from it, because then they can relate and say, oh, well, yeah, you're right. I also advise to get external coaching. You get a senior leader of the organization to coach your people on an individual basis. They can also be more free to speak about their problems, their struggles. So having these mentors, internal or external, people can relate more if it's the same company, and also they see these leaders doing it.
And do you coach, or how do you face when you have women in your team that maybe they are a little bit scared about going to another position?
Well, one thing that, and it's funny because in Wefox, we have many of us have realized about that. Many of us, meaning like 3 or 4 women who, like are in management positions, but we have came to the same conclusion that, women in general, we are very strict with the requirements that we think we need to do a certain job. This results sometimes in people not applying to a position, external or internal. So one thing we did is we have rewritten all of the job descriptions, also the ones that are going to be posted internally, for people to get a promotion. And it says now, if you do not have all of the requisites, do not worry, apply. This is not like a shopping list that you need to have exactly that. This is a guide for us to what we think we need for this job, right? I also realized that I know it's a stereotype, but in my case, it has happened to me. I normally, when I discuss with my direct reports who are female about salary raises, they say, yeah, whatever you think, right, and yes, and men are normally more like, I want this. I'm not going to do it unless I get this. I think they are more, this feeling of entitlement that, oh yeah, women in general, or at least what I've encountered, are more grounded, even too cautious. It's this kind of conversations and this podcast, these things that helps women understand, do not worry. And this infamous imposter syndrome. Even people with my experience who are as experienced or more than me, and sometimes we discuss about imposter syndrome.
Marta, I would like to talk now about your professional career and now your position at Wefox. So you initially studied engineering, computer science, but then you started studying financial instruments and markets, strategy, artificial intelligence. How important it is for an engineer learning about strategy?
Well, it also depends on the work you do, right? In some areas, in my area, it is very important. But I will explain you an anecdote, which I think it's, when I was a teenager and I was coding and I was going to pick the university, my uncle said to me, do you know, how can you build software? Like, for instance, for a pharmaceutical company, or for a pharmacy, if you do not know about pharmacy. And it struck me. I was like, I have no idea. Don't know. I guess that they're going to explain me. They're going to explain me in college, right? The answer is that you have to learn. You do not need to be a super expert, but you need to understand the business requirements in order to have the conversations. And as I was explaining before, also to be able to design sound technical solutions for them. Because, I don't know, the same architecture that is going to be valid for Meta, right? Like, it's not the same architecture that you're going to need for,
sure.
a different kind of business, right? In that respect, I think Agile, for instance, has helped a lot because it embeds what we call the product owners, the product manager teams. So then there is the direct relationship, and I have a very close relationship with my product counterparts. So, they help me to understand what they want, and I help them to understand I'm going to deliver it using these technologies. So for me, it's important to keep learning about the business, about the strategy. But of course, some of the executive courses that I've done are also about the new trends in artificial intelligence, right? It's this continuous learning approach. It's important to learn about the business, but it's important to learn about all kinds of things in engineering, right?
And talking about changes, Marta, you have been working in very different sectors. Why is it important to change of sectors? And what do you think about people who are the entire life in one sector or even in one company?
Again, I've changed a lot of the sectors, but always in IT or in tech. So that's my constant.
Okay.
So I can build software for an insurance company. I can build software for a commodities trading company or a car rental company, but it's building the software. In my case, I have been in different business sectors and it has helped me and I like it. Well, it's cool. I mean, you get to also know very different types of people. It is very different to work with a commodities trader in the city who is dealing with millions every second and it's all about adrenaline, than an insurance broker who runs a family business in Germany and has the same customers for 20 years, and his business is about having, the confidence with it's a completely different individual, a completely different market, completely different requirements, but it's also good to get to know these different people. So in my case, I like it. Again, it gives me perspective as well. It's like working in different countries. You work with very different people. It helps me adapt. It helps me be more flexible. And
you're a curious person, so you're natural making changes. So Marta, I made you a lot of questions. I think we can go for the final round of questions. What is your passion?
Creating. I love to create things. Yeah, oh. I love creating software. I love writing and reading, literature and traveling and learning all the time. Like my motto is always learning and creating, right? It's, and the two are very much, interlinked. To also other people can benefit from what I'm learning, right? I think this component as well of, sharing what I'm learning, it's very important to me.
And what is success for you?
I'm going to use a Greek word. So forgive me because I don't know how I'm going to pronounce it. It's ancient Greek. It's eudaimonia. And that is a concept that it was used by the Stoics. And it's the flourishing of the human being. It's how you are at peace with your life. Like, because what you do, your actions are aligned with your ethic. And it's very difficult to get there, right? For me, success is that I am living my life right now to, according to my values, and I feel at peace with who I am. Of course, always learning, right? And always trying to be a better human being, but that's the idea.
Could you tell us a little bit about a challenge or something, a goal that you want to achieve and you have in mind?
Somebody's going to kill me when he hears that, but running a marathon in every continent. So I'm on it. I'm on track, but that's a project that I am currently training for. And of course, making Wefox a big success. We are planning to be the #1 InsurTech by 2030.
I'm sure you will make it. A woman who inspires you.
So I think I mentioned her before. I really like Jacinta Ardern because of the way that she's leading. The very same fact that she resigned by being so honest. And I think it's a very refreshing change to, the typical leader that we're used to that clings to power as like power per se. I think it's an exercise of honesty and saying, if I cannot give it all, I better resign.
And what advice would you give yourself and Marta when was a child?
I would say be brave, do not be afraid. I mean, I'm very happy and I've been very lucky as well. But I would probably tell little Marta, everything is going to be fine because it's not easy. Sometimes you think that you are not going to get there. Sometimes you despair. Sometimes you fail. When you fail, I always explain this. It's, of course you learn and you grow, but while you are at it feels really bad. It doesn't feel that you are growing. So I think I would say be patient, be confident, be brave.
You will get there. So thanks a lot, Marta. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I hope you liked the interview with Marta. Wefox is definitely so lucky to have women like her, experts in technology and innovation, but also a great leader who empowers teams and brings them to the next level. See you next week, and thanks a lot. Ciao!